Welcome back to the COS Business Podcast. My name is Marcus, and today I'm the host of the show. Today we have Matthew Shem with Peak Brain Performance Centers with us today. Tell us a little bit about your business.
So Peak Brain Performance Centers is a neuro rehab facility where I basically see people from, it's starting to expand. I've seen people from as far as Paris already in the last year, but hopefully that continues expanding where I'm seeing people from all over the world. But I see people with different kinds of brain injuries, mostly being concussion and all the symptoms that go along with that, like dizziness and headaches and migraines, balance disorders, nausea, stuff like that. And then I'm also delving more into the functional medicine side of things, where you're seeing more metabolic conditions, like I'm managing a lot of people with autoimmune diseases. And then obviously stuff like strokes and movement disorders or stuff like that. So, the whole gamut of things, and then try to get them better as fast as I can.
That's incredible, man.
Now a word from our sponsors. Planet Duct offers astronomical air duct cleaning with the most powerful vacuum trucks in Colorado. They have taken air duct cleaning to a new intergalactic level that is far more powerful and proactive than any on the market in El Paso County or Southern Colorado. Reach out to Planet Duct for any of your air duct cleaning needs. Power Tool Safe is revolutionizing tool tracking and protection for everybody. With Power Tool Safe, you can protect the equipment that keeps your business running. Go to powertoolsafe.com and start your new account now and register up to $10,000 in tools for free. Recon Marketing is the fastest growing social media agency in Colorado. Recon focuses on becoming an extension of your business while providing social media management, review management, and digital marketing. Recon Marketing, putting you on the radar.
So what got you into this line of work? You seem pretty young. So
I'm only 25. So my story starts back in junior high when I had a weightlifting accident. I was squatting, put too much weight on the bar, went down, didn't come back up, and I ended up hurting my low back. And so it was then that I'm now walking around junior high like I'm 90 years old because my back hurts so bad. And my mom had seen a chiropractor before, so she recommended that I go see one. So we went and go see one. And shortly after starting to see this guy, I'm feeling good as new. And so it was then I was like, I think this is what I'm going to do. So I went all through junior high and high school saying that that's what I was going to do. And after I graduated high school, my mom said, why don't you go back to that doctor and make sure it's really the route that you want to go down? So I was like, I guess, okay. So I went and asked the guy if I could shadow him for the day, and I followed him around for the day. The end of the day comes, he goes, well, what'd you think? And I said, this is pretty interesting, because at the time he had just started doing more of what I do now. So I don't really do any traditional chiropractic care. I only do like brain-based rehab stuff. And so he had just started doing more of that, and I was like, this stuff is actually really interesting. And he said, well, great. Well, what do you think about a job to help out with things while I'm gone? Because I think he was going to go to Australia for like 2 weeks or something like that.
Wow.
So I ended up staying there. He hired me on, and I ended up staying there for about a year while I finished up my undergrad. And I kind of ran his rehab department. And it was then that I was like, okay, I think this is the route that I'm going to go. So shortly after that, I went to chiro school, did that whole thing, and then chiro school is a year-round school, and you have 10 trimesters. And in my second trimester, I started taking all the neurology courses on top of the already chiropractic program. And then I became the neurology club president and did that whole thing and just started learning as much as I could. And so like the extra credentials that you need to get the neurology title is you need 300 postgraduate hours. So I started in my second trimester.
That's like clinicals, essentially? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, it's kind of like education, just educational hours.
Okay.
So I did most of mine online. And so to get that credential, the extra credential that I have behind my name, you have to have 300 hours. And by the time I graduated, I had probably over 1,000.
Oh,
so,
wow.
I got I did all that. Then I moved to Minneapolis, where I worked in probably the largest clinic in the country that does what I do, where we were literally seeing people from all over the world flying in. And then COVID happened and made things very difficult. And then I spent a year there, and then I had enough of it. And so I moved here and I started my own business, and now we're a year in here.
That's incredible, man. So what made you choose Colorado Springs specifically? Did you just like draw something on the map, throw something down, say I want to live there? Did you come here before? How did that start?
Not quite like that. Well, maybe it was probably 5 years ago now. I had come to Denver for the first time. First time I've ever been out west. And I was like, man, I've been living in Texas my whole life. And so I was like, man, why do I live in Texas after seeing all these beautiful mountains and stuff like that out here? And so I just love Colorado. And so I said, I want to live in Colorado. And I thought about Denver initially. And then there's already, I think, 3 or 4 other clinics in Denver that do what I do. But then I looked a little bit south in Colorado Springs, and there was nobody. And so I thought that's probably a pretty good market in the fact that there is nobody here. And then a couple other reasons is, for one, I just love it. 2, there was no competition. 3, if I ever do become as big as the clinic that I was at, where people are flying in from all over the place, the second largest airport in Colorado is here.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I prefer to fly into Colorado Springs than Denver anyway.
Yeah.
And then there's a heavy military population here. And so I don't know why, but there's just a special place in my heart for the veteran population.
Awesome.
Especially because like I have a friend, one of my best friends, he works in a VA outside of Dallas. And so I know firsthand the care that those folks are getting, and it's just not the care that they should be receiving after, dedicating their life to this country. So there's a heavy veteran population here, and so I'm still trying to figure out how to get involved with them. I've tried reaching out to a couple of nonprofits and stuff like that to get involved with them, and that's still like kind of a slow roll. But I think those are like all the main reasons.
That's awesome, man. Especially with like veterans. So talk to us a little bit about like your current clientele, who you have. You say you've been trying to penetrate the veteran population, reaching out to some nonprofits, maybe striking up some strategic partnerships. But talk to us a little bit about like your current book of clients.
Okay. So initially when I came here, in regards to just like the marketing concept in general, is the clinic I came from, they were spending a lot of money on paid advertising. And then with COVID, that kind of ruined things because before COVID happened, about 50% of the people that were there every week, so backtrack a little bit, most of the people that come and see me, let's say that you hit your head. Now you're going to call me and say, I want to come see you. So I'll do an initial exam. That takes 90 minutes, and then I'll make my recommendation of care. If I think I can help you, then I'll typically make a recommendation of care that's 5 days long, okay? So Monday through Friday, and I'm going to see you for 3 hours each day, okay? So we do 15 hours of rehab in 1 week, and then on the last day, I give you some exercises to do at home, and then I send you on your way, and then we just check in every couple weeks to make sure that you're still progressing on your own. And in that week, I kind of expect to make like between 60 to 80% improvement. So with that clinic did the same thing where we're seeing people for 5 days. So every week, about 50% of the clientele that was there was flying from a different state or from out of the country even. And with COVID, obviously nobody was flying, right? So we had to change things. But that was my intention moving here is I'm just going to go really heavy on paid advertising. And I remember in that time that I was at that clinic, I spent a lot of time reading books about paid advertising and watching courses and YouTube videos and all this stuff, trying to figure out what is the best way to do this. And then I get here and I'm talking to people that are already own their own business. They're like, yeah, that doesn't really work here. This is a relationship-driven town. And I was like, whatever, there's 500,000 people here and surely they're all on the internet. And so I just didn't really listen to anybody. And then maybe a couple months into it, I was like, this is just not panning out. I'm just basically throwing money down the drain. And so it was after that I decided that if this is a truly relationship-driven town, I need to get face-to-face with people. And so I emailed every single chiropractor I could find in Colorado Springs, and there was like 200 facilities. So, I mean, there's probably 300 or 400 actual doctors here. So I emailed all of them, trying to meet them. I got like a 10% response rate, and then I just slowly started meeting them. And then I think I waited a couple months, and all the ones that didn't answer me, I gave them a call and basically met them. And then what has been really big for my business lately is when people find me, I'll then get a review from them and then send it to all the doctors that they've already seen. And so now if I can say, like, I took this patient that you weren't able to help for whatever reason, and for whatever reason I was, in 5 days, I can now send them that testimonial and say, like, here's what I did. Do you want to meet me or not? And so that's been really big. But in regards to the actual people that I see, I would say most people are concussion, a lot of car wrecks, like after a concussion with a car wreck. But actual symptom-wise, dizziness is by far my favorite thing to treat. Whether you're lightheaded, rocky, spinny, floaty, off balance, that's my favorite thing to treat. A lot of headaches and migraines, balance disorders, nausea. And then I think more so lately, I've been getting more into movement disorders. I don't know if you know anything about what that is, but like I saw a guy recently, and he has what's called cervical dystonia. Okay, and so it kind of happened. I think he said it was like 3 decades ago. He's now 50 something. I've seen a couple of these over my career so far, and it's interesting because a cervical dystonia is basically where your head gets like cranked over one way, and you can't control it to come back. And so a guy I saw in Minneapolis, he had a trick to where if he touched his index finger right behind his right ear, his head would get stuck over here. And then if he could touch back here, he could turn it straight. And same kind of thing with this guy is it just randomly, his head gets stuck over here and he can't control it back.
Yeah. That's incredible, man. That's so crazy. So, like, is there any, like, say someone I'm assuming you'd want them to see a professional right away if someone has like some level of a head injury or anything like that. But if someone's just exhibiting like dizziness or anything like that, is there any like tricks at home that you would recommend before coming in?
It's tough to say because especially with dizziness, there's so many different routes of dizziness. And so like if you actually look at the literature, the most common form of dizziness is something called BPPV, and that's where the crystals in your ear get loose. And that can happen. It's pretty common after some sort of traumatic event where now you get rattled and now these crystals come loose in your inner ear. And what happens, the typical characteristic symptoms is I lay back and now the whole room starts spinning around. And then it probably goes for a minute or two, and then it stops. And then if I just stay still, then I'm fine. With that, they say that that's like 90% of dizziness out there. And in my career, I've probably only seen a handful of them. And why is that? Because most people, if you go to your primary care, they're going to know how to do the maneuver that fixes that. And so it really depends on the type of dizziness that you have. So like if you're telling me that you're spinning, like or the actual room is spinning, that's a completely different dizziness than if you're just kind of like feel like you're rocking on a boat. Or maybe I stand up and I just get really lightheaded. Those are all different types of dizziness. So it's tough for me to answer that question.
Yeah.
But that is one of the reasons that the first line of communication in my business is I have on my website, there's a button that says contact us, and it'll go to a calendar where you can schedule a call with me. And so that's a free call for me basically to screen you and say, I think that you're a good fit for me or not. And then if you're not, then that's another reason why I want to meet all these healthcare providers around Colorado Springs.
Strategic partnerships.
So that I think that I'm pretty good at treating a handful of things, but I don't treat everything, right?
Okay.
And so being able to fill in those gaps with other people that are great in those particular things is important, I think.
That's so cool, man. That's so fascinating. So I'm a former football player.
Okay.
Obviously, with former football players, there's I've had a lot of concussions, 3, and I was only in high school, a football player. Do you get a lot of people who've competed in like collision or contact sports at the office?
Yeah. I actually just treated a guy who I think he was either semi-pro or like right on the verge of becoming a pro hockey player. So when I was in Minneapolis, I saw a lot of hockey players and a lot of professional hockey players. But yeah, I mean, I've seen football players, I've seen hockey players, I've seen soccer players, the whole gamut.
That's crazy. Yeah. So like this is your first time like actually starting a business from the ground up. Obviously you've worked in some of the more premier places in America. Talk to us a little bit about like how that whole process has been. You're a year and a half in. So yeah.
Yeah, it's been tougher than I thought initially. But I don't know, looking at other people, I feel like it's going well in the fact that like I'm currently in this space and I'm growing to a new space that's being built right now, and it's 3 times the space that my current office is, right? So things are obviously going well, and my wait list right now, like if you wanted to come and see me, is probably going to be 3 or 4 weeks before you can get in to see me. So I mean, things are going well, but I think it's also how I position myself in the market and the fact that there is nobody that does what I do, right? And so I was having this conversation with my mother the other day about my brother who is like trying to find a job. He's 2 years younger than me, and he's trying to find a job, and he just doesn't know what he wants to do. And I was telling her like he needs to spend every dollar that he has to go learn a skill that's marketable and employable, right? And he's basically spent all of his working years right now as a waiter. And my mom's like, well, he's pretty good at being a waiter. But I was like, but Mom, if let's say you get fired from being a waiter, they could fill that role tomorrow, right? It's not as easy to fill something like my role, right? Because you're gonna have to go to school for a long time and go a lot in debt, So, but with that, I think that it's been relatively easy for me, because for one, there is nobody that does what I do, and then there's already a lot of chiros here, a lot of other healthcare providers here that I've been able to meet that I fill the gap, the things that they're not good at, right? And so I get pretty much all my patients are coming from other providers. And then also is when most of my patients are coming to see me for a week at a time, and they're seeing me for 15 hours, my full schedule is 2 patients a week, right? And so it's pretty easy to then book that out. Right. You don't have to see a whole lot of people. Versus a traditional chiro, when you're seeing somebody for, 10, 15 minutes, you got to see a bunch of people in one day, and then that's a lot of people to see in a week to be able to book out, 3, 4 weeks in advance.
Yeah, no, for sure. Does that mean it's more probably a premium service, like because you're booking out 3 hours at a time?
For sure.
So it's probably a lot easier to scale because of that too, like you were saying.
Well, I don't know about that, because this is something that I've been thinking about in regards to my new office. one of the big reasons I want to grow my space is so that I can have more employees. I don't have any employees right now, so I do everything of the business right now. And after only being open for a year, I didn't think that I would be this burnt out already. But it's just so taxing to do every single aspect of the business all yourself, right? And so I'm really excited about my new office where I'll have employees, and then I also want to buy more equipment where I don't have to be there. So like I'm going to buy like a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, where my thought process is now to where if you come and see me for an exam, I can now make recommendations on what route I want you to go down. Like you're going to pay X amount of dollars to work with me, or you can do X amount of dives in the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, and that's going to cost X amount of dollars. And then my tech can do that for me, right? And so that's just like the scaling of the business. But I was thinking about how I can get out of the role of the day-to-day. And
so smart.
Also, only being in a year, thinking long term of like, how do I ever sell this thing? When right now this business is built on me.
Yeah.
And so it's very difficult in the fact that thinking long term and thinking about how I'm ever going to be able to get out of this and sell it for a decent
you are
sum
the
of money.
business.
Yeah, because I'm the business. And then on top of that is the credentials that I have. There's like 637 people in the whole world that have the credentials I have.
Wow.
Okay? And probably half of those are still practicing, and probably half of those are actually really good, and probably half of those, if they're really good, already have their own business. So now it's a very small pool of people that I'm picking from. So either I'm now going to have to try to pick from this really small pool, or I'm going to have to hire somebody right out of school that I then have to train, which I'm coming to the conclusion lately that that's probably what I'm going to have to do. But it's not that I want to do that, you know?
Yeah,
especially
build a program.
Especially too, is if you think about the growth of a business is now, if let's say that you just graduated school and I wanted to hire you and you don't know anything about what I do, but I have to train you now, right? So now this business becomes the conglomerate of my brain, because I'm teaching you, versus if I have somebody that's already been in the field a little while and they're really good at this, now I can hire them and now we have two brains in office, you know? So I think it's more advantageous in the long run, especially for patient care, if there's two people that are not the training of one brain.
It's true. It's like that whole principle of like general practitioner versus like the surgeon, right? And like you're like Dr. Miami or something like that, trying to find another Dr. Miami. Yeah. It's really hard. I used to work at an agency. I know we talked briefly before the podcast that like I have an agency that I own now. And I learned a lot by working, because they're like the top agency in Colorado. I learned a lot of how to run a business, or how to run specifically a marketing company and how to scale it. Yeah. And it sounds like you naturally have business chops, which is insane. You know, did you learn a lot from that, like your experience too, like working at other places?
I think between that and then also whenever I was in school, I knew that I was not going to go open my own practice immediately. And actually, when I moved to Minneapolis, I told that guy that I'd probably stay there for 5 years. I ended up only staying for 1. But my thought process was, I'm going to try and gain as much information as I can. So I've visited offices all over the country and just pick and choose the little bits and pieces that I like, that I don't like, and then try to put that into a business model that I like. And then also, I'm a really big proponent in a quote that says, everything that you want to learn has already been written in a book somewhere. So I read a lot. And maybe that's not 100% accurate, especially in my world of healthcare, because, you know, things are constantly
always changing.
But you get the gist, and the fact that, like, it's important to constantly evolve yourself. And I was actually just talking to somebody else about this recently, about how, like, I enjoy winding down my day with reading something. So I'll read, you know, a couple chapters of something every night. And it just amazes me how there are people out there who don't want to level up, like in whatever category it be, whether it's being in your business, in your relationships, in your self-help books, or whatever it may be. It's amazing to me that people don't want to level up. You know?
I think it's a hard thing too, because I mean, in life, there's so many different types of, I don't want to say quote unquote distractions, but there are, you know, like having a girlfriend, having a family, like.
Distract you real quick right now. Could you pass me that phone? I was trying to find a good cutting point this whole entire time.
No, you're good. You're good. But there's a lot of distractions in life. And I think like this is a great time in your life, because I did the exact same thing when I was learning to build a marketing agency. Like I had one purpose when I went there. I wanted to soak up as much as I can and like get as much perspectives to building something. But I also understood in that moment in time, I was a single man. Yeah. So I knew, and I was I already had my discipline, my habits all in check before I even went there. I just knew it was like that was the moment in my life where I'm giving up that season to do what you're talking about too.
Right.
But you're right.
I think something to tie into that is I've always been, I want to say, like kind of obsessed with like time And so I always look long term. And so that's actually one of the big
awesome.
reasons that I decided to open up my own business relatively early, is because the clinic that I came from in Minneapolis, that guy, he is now maybe 38, 37, I think.
Oh, that young.
Mhm.
Wow.
And he's been in practice for 10 years. Okay.
Okay.
And his wife is also a chiro. And whenever I joined that practice, I was the 6th doctor on. And he has a daughter that's now, I think, 3.
Mhm.
And whenever his daughter was born, his wife didn't work at all, and he was only working a day or 2 a week. And the reason he was able to do that is because he has 5 other doctors filling the gaps for things that so he
Right.
doesn't have to be there every day, right? And I understood looking at that, saying that I know that didn't happen overnight. And so I want to set that groundwork now so that whenever I'm in that position, I have opportunities like that as well.
Yeah, and it sounds like, again, you have business chops, so you're able to do that. Because, like, for me, I'm in that level of my business where I do have people who do most of the work for me,
Yeah.
which is great. But it's also like, business is people. You
Sure.
have to learn how to manage and delegate tasks to
Sure.
people. It's a whole nother itch you're scratching and a whole nother skill you have to learn. Have you had experience, like, say, being in a leadership role, like managing employees or anything like that? Or?
Not necessarily managing employees, but I mean, I guess whenever I was the president of the neurology club in chiro school, I mean, I was the guy that was over everybody. So yeah, I have to making decisions there. I think also too is I'm really looking forward to the day when I have employees, because I feel like I'm going to be pretty good at it, just because of all the information that I've gained over seeing other employers and being like, well, that was not a great job,
Yeah.
or maybe this was a good job, and then all the books that I read, I just feel like it's going to be an exciting time, I think.
That's really cool, man. That's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you have a lot of passion for it too, and that
Yeah.
really shows through in the work. I think the hardest thing for me, just like it might be with you, is that like I was really good at what I did, and like training people and like seeing like what their baseline, what they start with, and then like trying to get them as quickly as you can to the level that you think is acceptable when you have such a high standard for yourself and what you represent as your company.
Sure.
So that's always like a big challenge, and it sounds like you're up for the challenge and you'll have some programming in place for it. But
Yeah.
that's so exciting, man, that you've been doing that. Tell us a little bit more about the new facility. You said you're expanding. That's what you're trying to do. It's gonna be off of Lake Drive, you said?
Lake Avenue, yeah.
Oh, Lake Avenue, yeah. Yeah.
So it's over there in Lake Avenue. It's going to be in the Colorado Springs Orthopedic Group building. I move in January 1st. And I think it's just really exciting. It's the first time, like the office that I'm in right now, I moved here without knowing a soul, okay? And so I wanted to keep everything overhead-wise just as low as possibly
Smart
I could.
man.
And so I'm in this co-working space, which is there's 2 rooms, and it's just there's no room for another person to be in there as an employee. And so also the only request I made for that landlord was most of the people that come and see me after head injury have light sensitivity. And so I was like, can we put dimmers on the lights?
Right.
That was the only request I made. And so it's really interesting being on the flip side of this now, where I am controlling the entire build out from A to Z. And I'm getting like, they're basically demoing this whole suite and building all the walls and everything that I want. I don't know. It's just really exciting. It's really fun.
That's so cool, man. And then you've also like, this is so much that and I just feel like there's like, you have a knack for like trying and going into new seas, because we talked about this before the podcast. Like, you've only been in Colorado for like a year and a half, and you've told me about different hikes you've done. I mean, I'm a hiker, and you've done hikes that I've always wanted to do, and I've lived here for almost 20 years. Like, that's so cool. Like,
Do you do any 14ers?
Yeah, I've done some 14ers for sure. But yeah, tell us a little bit about like what you've done, like in your free time, because that's important too, right?
Yeah.
Work-life balance.
Yeah, I think especially too after being the sole person that runs this entire business, I really like at least one day a week where I can just step back and not have to do anything. And I'm sure you probably know who Simon Sinek is, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so he was on a podcast, I think, and he was talking about how he was describing introvert versus extrovert. And I've never heard anybody describe it like this, but I think it's brilliant. And he says, as an introvert, think about every interaction you have with another person like an exchange of currency. Okay, so as an introvert, I wake up the day and I have 5 coins to give. And so now every time I meet you, I give you a coin. And I meet 4 other people and I give them a coin. And so now by the end of the day, I'm just exhausted and deprived, and I need to just be by myself and recoup. Versus an extrovert, they start the day with nothing. And so now every
Love
time
that.
they have a conversation, they gain a coin. And by the end of the day, they're fueled and thriving and stuff like that. And I definitely fall into that first category. And so after a full week of patient care, I mean, it's just draining for me. And so I really like to just be having a full day by myself where I don't have to talk to anybody. I don't have to really worry about business, and to just take a step back. And so every Sunday, That's kind of my day where I'll get together with a couple friends and we'll just go and hike something. And I'm the kind of person that I don't like doing the same thing twice. Other than I was just talking to a patient about this, like movies, TV shows, hikes. Like I never like to do anything twice. I want to see something new, right? Other than books. Books are different. I don't know why. It's just like I would like to just gain more information out of that book. But yeah, so I go and do different hikes every weekend, pretty much. And then last weekend I just finished my 8th 14er.
Dude, good job.
so-
Holy cow. You're well on you've done Pikes Peak, obviously,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
Yeah. And you said you did Mount Snuffles.
That was last weekend, yeah.
That's crazy. That's a level 3. So is that like your like highest
That
level
was-
you've done?
So there was a guy with us named Drew, and he has done all of them already in Colorado. And he says that if you have like a scale of 0 to 100, 100 being the most difficult, then this was probably like an 80 on the difficulty scale. And I don't know why, because I usually hate hiking 14ers because I'm not like as good of a hiker as all my friends, and so I usually get left behind.
Yeah,
And then
that's
I'm
the
just by
thing.
myself. And but for whatever reason on this one, I don't know. I never really thought it really got difficult until we were within a couple hundred feet of the summit, and I was just moving along the whole time. And I don't know. There was something different about it.
There's something to be said too about like the mental challenge that like specifically a 14er will give
Yeah.
you just because of how long it is. Like there's
That took
Long's
9
Peak.
hours.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
And like I don't know if you've ever heard of Long's Peak, but that one's like a 17-hour hike.
Yeah, someone was just telling me that I need to do that one,
Yeah.
but they didn't tell me that was that long.
It's probably the longest one.
Yeah.
I believe it's the longest one. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay.
But like there's a lot to be said about that, like that mental like challenge of I think that's most of the hike, you
Sure.
know. I don't know if you watched any like great shows on Netflix like regarding hiking or mountaineering, or have you ever seen The Alpinist or
I've seen like clips of it, but I haven't watched the whole
yeah,
thing.
that's a great one.
Mhm.
And you've seen 14 Peaks. Have you seen that one?
I've seen the cover of it, but
Oh,
I haven't
okay.
watched it though.
You should watch that because he talks. I mean, one like the premise of the show or of the documentary rather is he's trying to climb the hardest 14 peaks in the world in the fastest amount of time.
Yeah.
And he talks about like how he is able to build his body up to that and essentially just not get redlining ever. Like you get yourself in that orange and you can build that orange zone as best as you can, but
Sure.
you never hit red because once you hit red, you never go back.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see. Like we'll have people that will fly in, like friends that live in South Dakota or Oklahoma or Florida, whatever it may be, and it's interesting doing what I would consider an easy hike now, and I'm just like going all the way to the top, and they're like, "This is so hard." So it's interesting to see after just a year how different my body has changed in regards to acclimating to the elevation.
Oh gosh, it's so true. I have hiked with a pretty experienced hiker too. She's about to do all of them. She's like on her last like 3, I think.
Yeah.
And like the level of skill. I mean, she's in her 50s and she is so quick going up there.
Yeah.
And I think it's really good to have someone with that experience going up there
Yeah.
because I think it helps, anything that you do in life. Like if you have someone who's better at you, you're going to automatically try to you average out to that level, right?
sure.
So it's good. So maybe that friend that you had, that you said Drew, maybe that's why you've been able to like exponentially get so much better at hiking is because you've
Maybe.
done things
I
with
was
them.
following him
They
and he
pushed
was-
you a little bit is
Yeah.
what I'm saying,
Yeah, following him, and he was just moving along the whole time. It's like, this is basically easy. I was like, God, okay.
That's crazy, man. Well, is there anything else you'd like to get out there before we start wrapping this up?
I wanted to tie into what you just said in regards to following somebody or having somebody as a role model, or and I think that applies to. I'm sure that most of your audience is business owners, right?
Mhm.
And so, I think something that's interesting is that I was talking to somebody recently about how my educational career now, as I used to think that I wanted to go back to school and get like a nurse practitioner degree just so I have a broader scope of practice. But I think I've gotten into the mindset now where it's just like I've hit the point where I'm doing what I want to do, right? And if I want to add these additional services, I'm just going to hire that out. So the same kind of thing is like just either getting to the point where you can take some load off of your plate by hiring that person or educating yourself further. And so I think I'll leave you with something that I've been thinking a lot about lately, and having conversations with colleagues and friends and patients and stuff like that. And it's interesting, I think, to think about how we come into this world almost with no understanding, right? No understanding of what this journey is going to look like of life. And all we do is observe. We observe everything around us, everything and everyone. And it's the adults that are around us that tell us like this means that, and we ascribe meaning to that, and we ascribe fact to that. When we ascribe meaning to that because we think that we're a child, right, and they're an adult, and so we're going to listen to whatever they have to
Totally.
say. When the reality is that that whatever they're telling us may or may not be true. We're listening to one person's reality of how they see the world, right? And then we then grow up to be adults and then pass those beliefs on to other people when they, again, may or may not be true. And so I think it's interesting to think about the unfortunate reality of how many people are out there that then have that belief that they never like take a step back, look at, analyze that, and figure out like, why is it that I truly believe that? And so like a quote that is on that line, I don't remember who said it, but they said that we question all of our beliefs except for those we truly believe and those that we never think to question, which I think is really interesting. So I guess I'll leave you with that.
That's awesome, man. Well, where can people find you?
You can find me on Peak Brain Performance Centers everywhere. And then if you want to actually get a hold of me, you can find me at Matthew Shem everywhere. So
awesome, man. Well, this has been a great episode. It's been awesome to finally get to know you, and we'll see you guys on the next one.